Most startups don't fail because the idea was bad. They fail because they built the wrong thing really well.
Welcome back to the Better Version Book Club, the podcast where we break down the world's most influential business and personal development books. Not to worship them, but to stress test them against real life.
Because the goal isn't to sound smart at dinner parties, it's to think more clearly, make better decisions, and avoid wasting years building things that don't actually matter.
Each episode, we take one big idea, strip away the hype, challenge the cliches, and ask a simple question. Does this still hold up in the world we're living in now?
And today, we're doing exactly that with a book that quietly reshaped how startups, companies, and even solo operators think about building things, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. A book that's over a decade old and somehow more relevant in 2026 than ever.
To understand why this book mattered so much, you have to rewind to what startup culture actually looked like back then. You'd start by writing the Great American Business Plan. 100 pages of beautifully formatted 5-year financial projections, market analysis, all of it a complete work of fiction. You'd spend months on this document.
Right, it was a sacred text.
Then you'd go into stealth mode. You raise a ton of money based on the sacred text, lock your engineers in a room for 18 months, and build a product in total secrecy. The whole time, you're just executing against the plan. No customer feedback allowed. They might steal your idea.
And there's such a deep human element to that, isn't there? It's rooted in the myth of the lone genius, the visionary who sees a perfect future and just needs to build it. There's a lot of ego tied up in that vision. Showing something unfinished feels vulnerable. It feels like admitting you don't have all the answers. So you polish and perfect it in isolation, emotionally attached to every single feature because it's your creation.
I remember a company, I won't name names, that was building a revolutionary social network for pet owners. They spent millions. They had a launch party with a celebrity cat, the whole 9 yards. Then the big day comes and they find out that pet owners are perfectly happy using existing social networks. They just like posting pictures of their pets. The revolutionary features were solving a problem nobody actually had. All that effort, all that money for a celebrity cat to launch an empty app. That was the default path to failure, a spectacular launch followed by a quiet, expensive death.
And think about the teams inside those companies. They become feature factories. For 2 years, their job is just to translate a static document into code. There's no learning, no connection to the customer. It's a recipe for burnout because at the end of that long tunnel, when the launch fails, the team has nothing to show for it but a product nobody wants and a sense of profound exhaustion.
Which is where Reese comes in and offers this radical alternative. He proposes that startups aren't just smaller versions of big companies. They're organizations built to search for a repeatable and scalable business model, and that search requires a different method. He gives us the core engine of the whole philosophy, the build, measure, learn feedback loop.
Exactly. Instead of a linear path from idea to launch, he frames it as a continuous cycle. It's about turning your core ideas into a small product or experiment. That's the build step. Then you see how customers respond. That's the measure step. And finally, you decide whether to change your strategy or stick with it. That's the learn step. Then you do it all over again, but a little smarter this time. And it's a true loop. What happens when teams try to skip a step?
You get predictable disasters. Build and measure without learn. That's just collecting data for its own sake. You're churning out features and tracking vanity metrics without ever changing your strategy. Build and learn without measure, that's just guessing. You're building things and then having opinions about how they went. You're operating on anecdotes, not evidence. And my personal favorite, measure and learn without build. That's analysis paralysis. You sit in meetings, look at spreadsheets, and talk about what you could do, but you never actually create anything to test your ideas in the real world. You have to do all three or you're just spinning your wheels.
It seems like it also creates a healthier team dynamic. It removes the pressure of one person needing to be the infallible visionary. The goal isn't to prove the founder's idea was right. The goal is for the entire team to discover what is true together. It creates real psychological safety because the process isn't about blaming people when an idea fails, it's about celebrating the learning that the failed experiment gave you.
The best analogy I have for it is scientific. A business plan is a hypothesis. It's a guess. The old way was to treat the guess as fact. The lean way is to treat it like a scientist does. Your job is to design the fastest, cheapest experiment to try and disprove your own hypothesis.
I like that.
The goal isn't to build a feature. The goal is to achieve what Ries calls validated learning. It's proving with real data that you're on the right track. Are we building something people actually want? Are we solving a real problem? It's about reducing risk and uncertainty with each cycle of the loop.
Psychologically, this is incredibly hard. It demands that founders shift their identity from visionary who is right to scientist who is searching for what is true. It requires a huge amount of humility to actively seek out evidence that your brilliant idea might be wrong.
Totally. And to do that, you need tools. The most famous and perhaps most butchered tool from the book is the minimum viable product, the MVP. And oh, how this term has been abused.
Okay, let's hear it. What's the Alec rant on the modern MVP?
The term MVP has become corporate jargon for a cheap, buggy, feature-incomplete 1.0 that we can ship and apologize for later. It's an excuse to release a bad product. That is not at all what Rise meant.
Right, he's so clear about this. The MVP is not the product, it's the experiment. Its primary purpose is learning, not revenue. It's the smallest thing you can build to start the build, measure, learn loop and test your single most risky assumption.
Exactly. Let's make this concrete with examples. Remember Dropbox? Their riskiest assumption wasn't technical, it was behavioral. In 2008, would normal people trust some random startup with all their files and install a weird folder on their computer?
That's a huge leap of faith.
Huge. So instead of building the whole complex system, their MVP was a 3-minute video. It just showed the founder narrating as his mouse moved files around on screen, demonstrating how seamless it would be. They put the video on a landing page with a sign-up button. Their beta list exploded overnight. They validated their riskiest assumption without writing a single line of production code. That is an MVP.
Another great one is the concierge MVP, where you don't even build software, you perform the service manually for a single customer.
Yes, the company Food on the Table wanted to test the idea that families would pay for weekly meal plans and grocery lists. The founder literally went to the grocery store for his first customer, bought her food, and delivered it. He learned an immense amount about her actual needs, not her stated needs. The assumption being tested was, is this a painful enough problem that someone will pay for a solution? Or think even bigger, like Zappos. Today, buying shoes online is normal. But back in 1999, the riskiest assumption was, will people buy shoes without trying them on? That's a massive behavioral question. Instead of building a whole e-commerce empire and warehousing system, the founder, Nick Swinmurn, went to a local shoe store, took pictures of their shoes, and put them on a simple website. When an order came in, he'd go back to the store, buy the shoes, and ship them himself. That was his MVP. The website wasn't the product, the service of buying and shipping the shoes was the product, and it was entirely manual. He was testing the core customer behavior.
And once you run your experiment, you have to measure the results. This brings us to the next crucial tool, understanding the difference between looking busy and making progress, which is all about vanity metrics versus actionable metrics.
Vanity metrics, my absolute favorite. These are the numbers that make you feel good but don't tell you anything about the health of your business. We got 100,000 page views this month. So what? We have 50,000 total user signups. Great. How many of them came back after the first day?
It's like judging a restaurant by how many people walked in the door, not by how many ordered a meal, came back next week, and told their friends.
Exactly. Actionable metrics are about causation. They tell you the truth. The classic example is cohort analysis. Don't look at your total user growth, look at it by cohort. Of the 100 people who signed up in the first week of January, what percentage were still active in February? What about the March cohort? If your product is getting better, you should see later cohorts retaining at a higher rate. That's a signal of real progress.
And that data, that real learning, leads you to the biggest decision a startup has to make. What do you do with the information? This brings us to the idea of pivot or persevere.
Right. If the data validates your hypothesis, if people are using your product, staying, and paying, you persevere. You double down and accelerate.
But if the data shows your core hypothesis is flawed, you have to make a pivot. And Ries frames this so well. A pivot is not a failure. It's not starting over. It's a structured, strategic course correction designed to test a new fundamental hypothesis about the product, the market, or the engine of growth. But it's so hard emotionally. This is where the sunk cost fallacy just paralyzes people. They think, we've already spent a year and $1 million on this idea. We can't just change now.
And the pragmatic view is that the year and the $1 million are gone, no matter what you do. The only thing you control is what you do tomorrow. Sticking with a failed strategy isn't heroic, it's stubborn. A pivot is about respecting the evidence and, more importantly, respecting your own future. It's a search for a destination that actually exists.
Okay, so let's pull all of this into 2026. We're in a world now where AI has fundamentally changed the game. How does that affect this loop?
This is the crux of it. AI has compressed the build part of the build, measure, learn loop to almost zero. You can describe an app and an AI agent can generate the code. You can create a marketing website in minutes. Building the thing is no longer the hard part. It's becoming trivial.
Which sounds like a superpower, but what's the danger?
The danger is that you can now build and scale a terrible idea with breathtaking efficiency. It's my favorite analogy. You've built a car that can go from 0 to 100 in a second, but you haven't checked the map. You can now drive very, very efficiently off a cliff. The danger is even more insidious than that. It's the rise of the AI-generated MVP factory. I see founders now who, instead of focusing on a single core hypothesis, will use AI to generate 10 different app prototypes over a weekend. They're all slightly different, targeting slightly different markets. And because it's so easy, they just launch them all. Now they're getting a flood of low-quality data from 10 different bad ideas. They're mistaking the frantic activity of building for the genuine progress of learning. They're A/B testing the deck chairs on the Titanic.
And that creates a totally new kind of burnout. It's not the slow exhaustion of building in a cave for 2 years. It's the high-speed burnout of decision fatigue. You're drowning in dashboards and analytics from 10 different projects, none of which are actually going anywhere. You have more data than ever, but less signal. It's a recipe for chasing your own tail with maximum efficiency. So let's flip that. Instead of using AI to create more noise, how can a smart founder use it to accelerate the learning, to get to the signal faster?
By using it as a superhuman research assistant. Imagine a founder doing a proper concierge MVP, manually providing a service to her first 5 customers. In the old days, she'd take notes, maybe transcribe the calls. In 2026, she feeds those 5 raw conversation transcripts into an AI. She asks it, what are the common emotional words used? What are the key pain points mentioned? What competing products did they bring up? The AI isn't building the product, it's accelerating the learning. It might come back and say 4 out of 5 customers use the word overwhelmed to describe their current workflow. That single word is gold. It's the insight you build your entire marketing message around. The AI is helping you find a signal in the human noise faster than ever before. And it dramatically de-risks the pivot. Imagine a team whose product for photographers is failing. Their data is clear. But they have a new hypothesis. The core technology would be perfect for architects to visualize building sites. In 2011, that pivot is a terrifying 6-month rebuild. In 2026, they can spend a day with an AI. They generate a new landing page with copy for architects, a video prototype showing the new use case, and a targeted ad campaign. In 48 hours, they can get real data on whether this new direction has any merit.
That makes the pivot less of a terrifying bet-to-company leap of faith and more of a quick, affordable experiment. It allows teams to be more courageous and data-driven in their search for a business model that works. The strategic decision and the creative leap are still human, but AI makes testing that leap faster and cheaper than ever before, which is the whole point of the loop. It brings up a fascinating point. As AI commoditizes the how to build, how to code, how to design, the entire landscape of value shifts. The new competitive advantage isn't a technical skill anymore. It's a set of deeply human qualities. It's the deep empathy to actually sit with a customer and feel their frustration, to find a problem worth solving in the first place. It's the relentless curiosity to ask better questions, not just the obvious ones. And maybe most importantly, it's the intellectual humility to see the data, accept that your beautiful idea was wrong, and have the courage to learn from it.
I couldn't agree more, but I frame it even more bluntly. These aren't just soft skills, they're hard-nosed business advantages now. Empathy isn't about being nice, it's the most effective tool for market discovery. Curiosity isn't a personality trait, it's the ultimate risk mitigation strategy because it forces you to challenge your own assumptions before the market does. Humility isn't about being meek, it's about being ruthlessly efficient with your time and capital by not wasting them on a failing idea. In 2026, the best founders aren't the ones with the best prompts for their AI, they're the ones with the best questions for their customers.
And we are just flooded with answers. AI can answer almost any how question. How do I build this? But it can't answer the why or the should. Why does this matter? Should this even exist? That's a profoundly human question.
And this is where people get themselves into trouble. They outsource the thinking along with the building. It's like having the world's fastest calculator and forgetting to ask whether the math problem was worth solving in the first place. This is why lean is more relevant than ever, because if build is free, then the entire value of the process shifts to the other two parts, measure and learn. The new bottleneck in business isn't technical skill, it's clarity of thought, it's taste, it's human judgment and the ability to ask the right questions.
So, the core message for our listeners in 2026 is really this. In a world where AI lets you build anything, the principles of the lean startup are what help you build the right thing. And that applies far beyond startups. This way of thinking matters just as much if you're running a team inside a big organization, building a side project, creating content, or trying to improve how an existing business actually works.
That's it exactly. The discipline is no longer about building fast, it's about learning fast, with intention. The new competitive advantage isn't access to technology, it's clarity. That's the real edge.
So, for anyone listening, whether you're building a company or just a new project, the invitation from this book, more than a decade later, isn't just to build faster, it's to learn deeper, ask the scary questions, and listen to the answers, especially when they're not what you want to hear. That's how you build something that truly lasts.
Well said. The tools will change again next year and the year after that. But the fundamental discipline of not wasting your life building something nobody wants, that's timeless.
And that's really the quiet power of this book. It's not about startups or tech or even business models. It's about how you make decisions when the future is uncertain.
Especially now when AI makes building almost anything cheap and fast. The real skill isn't execution, it's judgment. Knowing what's worth testing, what's worth ignoring, and when to change your mind.
If there's a thread running through everything we talk about on this podcast, it's this idea. Becoming a better version of yourself isn't about doing more. It's about thinking more clearly.
Asking better questions, listening to reality instead of your ego, and having the courage to stop building things that don't deserve your time.
Thanks for spending this time with us on the Better Version Book Club. We'll see you next time.
That's the Better Version Book Club. See you next chapter.